This conference will now be recorded.
Hi, everyone. This is the Oceanside Library, and we're bringing you tonight Healthy Transitions to College during this very difficult time of COVID and how it has changed the face of what colleges will look like. We have with us tonight Dr. Kellyanne Brady from the Mental Health and Wellness Center at Malloy College, who will help us understand and deal with some of these changes.
Thank you so much. Hi, everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about healthy transitions to college, both just in general, but also in the face of these very difficult times that we're facing and experiencing. So what we're going to do is we're going to start off with some group rules. So if anybody chooses to participate, feel free to use the chat. You don't need to turn on your mic or camera unless you feel comfortable doing so. So I'm also going to ask that if you do comment or join in, feel free to put that in the chat, and we will be able to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, and just be mindful of what you're sharing. It should be appropriate for the group, and just keep in mind that this is recording, so this will be shared online. So if there's something private, you might not want that to be shared later on. Okay, so I'm going to ask everyone to think about what are some of the thoughts you're having about college? What are some of the things that you're feeling right now? What are the emotions that you're experiencing? What are the changes you think you'll encounter? What are you looking forward to? What do you hope to accomplish? What are you most concerned about? These are all things that are probably on your mind right now, and maybe some of these things feel very mixed because there's a lot of different things going on right now, and there's a lot of uncertainty in what's going on and how school's going to look, and even what the next few months will bring. So I wanted to ask you all to kind of think about these feelings and these thoughts that you're having and how they might be mixed. So one of the things that we always want to talk about when we're talking about stressful times and difficult transitions is understanding the body. And understanding the body is important because stress does a lot to us. Stress is not just something we have around us, it actually does things to us. So the body actually reacts to our stress levels, and not all stress is bad. So, for example, one of the things that we talk about is good stress versus bad stress. And good stress can be something like going to college. And right now it's both, it can be both good and bad at the same time. So this is something that we need to keep in mind, that, you know, as it's a scary time, but it's also exciting time. So there's good stress and there's bad stress. And we need to learn how to manage that stress to take care of our bodies. And stress does affect everyone, and that's important to remember too. And chronic stress, so if we let the stress linger, it can really be harmful to our health. So let's take a look at this diagram here. So what are some of the things that stress can do to us? Now, not everybody's going to experience all of these symptoms. Some people are going to experience maybe one or two of them, and other people may experience more. But, you know, something that is pretty common is headaches, changes in your mood, maybe some depression, difficulty sleeping, heartburn, changes in your breathing, high blood pressure, sensation of pounding heart, your stomach, it hurts, or you know, if you've heard the expression your stomach's in knots, that can be a sign of stress as well. All of these different things are signs that our body is undergoing some sort of stress, and our body is getting ready to either deal with something or fight something or run away from something. So it's called the fight or flight response. So that's why all of these physical effects happen to us. So we want to be mindful and pay attention to that so we can catch it as soon as we can. So what are some of the emotional effects of stress? So now that we know the physical signs, which often can be more obvious, these emotional effects of stress are things that we want to look out for. Something that's very common for many people is becoming easily agitated or frustrated, sort of like having a short fuse. It could be a sensation of feeling overwhelmed or out of control all the time, like feeling like everything around you is going on, but you don't have anything within your control. There's nothing you can do to help your situation. You may have problems with relaxing or quieting your minds. You can't seem to turn off your brain. You're always having racing thoughts about the worries that are going on. You might be experiencing a drop in self-esteem or maybe feeling more insecure than usual. You could also be having a sensation of depression or maybe some anxiety. Anxiety is like this really intense sense of worry or dread, and these could be pretty prevalent when we're going through a big transition. Additionally, avoiding others or previous lived activities, or what we might call this is like withdrawing from the things that you normally do. That could be something that is a challenge for many. And difficulty concentrating or following through on your thoughts or things that you want to do. So difficulty concentrating often comes from these worries that we're having, the overwhelming thoughts and the high amount of thoughts that we're having. So these are things that we want to keep in mind, that these are also signs, maybe a little less obvious, but still signs of high levels of stress. So now we're going to talk about how do we manage the stress, because it said that if we don't manage it, it can be detrimental to our health. So managing our stress is really important. First thing we want to do is we want to listen to our body and act accordingly. If we're having tense muscles, or if we find ourselves having racing thoughts and are getting a stomach ache, we might want to find a way to relax. And one of the things that we can do to help that is be active and engage in some exercise that can often burn off some of that uncomfortable feelings or manage some of those feelings. It also helps boost positive hormones that help us manage stress, sort of like endorphins, help improve our mood as well. We want to maintain a healthy, balanced diet. One of the things that many people tend to do is either not eat at all because they're stressed, or overeat because they are trying to soothe themselves. We want to make sure that we're mindful of our diet so that it is healthy, because a healthy body can help promote a healthy mind. You can practice mindfulness or meditation. There's a lot of great techniques to practice mindfulness and also meditation. There's a lot of different ways to practice this, and that's not necessarily the scope of this program here. But if you look if you do a Google search for mindfulness activities or meditation exercises, you can find a lot of great resources. Setting goals and priorities. Now make sure you know that it's okay to say no. If you feel overwhelmed or you feel like adding something else to your plate during a stressful time would be too much for you, remind yourself that it's okay to say no. And when you prioritize the things that are most important, you'll end up feeling less stressed because you don't keep overwhelming yourself. Additionally, taking breaks when needed. That's important. When we're under a lot of stress and we have a lot of things that we need to get done, often we feel like we're forced to just keep going, keep going, keep going. But that's not necessarily healthy for our body or for our minds. So we need to take breaks when we need to. Something that can be really helpful is maybe just a quick walk away from the computer, or walk around the block, or just getting outside for a few minutes. Anything just to take your mind off of what it is that is stressing you out at that moment. And also reach out for help when you need it. So talking to someone, getting support for someone, having someone listen to you for a little while, and who can empathize with your situation or what you're experiencing can be really helpful. So for those that are transitioning to college, it may feel very different, feel very overwhelming, but responsibility is a big part of this transition to college. And we're going to talk a little bit about how to take responsibility so that you can successfully transition to college. So there's going to be a lot of new responsibilities because when you're a college student, it's a very different world than when you're in high school or really in any of these any of your life thus far. So some responsibilities could be staying on top of your assignments. Your teachers are going to expect you to be more independent and take control of your work and manage your own time. So being able to stay on top of your assignments, understanding that there's likely more coursework in college than you're used to, so being prepared, mentally prepared for that. Being in charge of cleaning your dorms, doing other things, putting meals together. All of these different things that you need to do are really now all of your responsibilities. So it's important to kind of have a plan ahead of time so that you know how you're going to tackle some of these increased responsibilities. Financial responsibilities, how are you going to manage bills? What are you going to be financially responsible for? How are you going to manage your budget that you have? And also being your own parent. So there might not be as many rules in place, but at the same time, in order to stay on top of some of these responsibilities we've already talked about, you might need to consider some rules that you put in place for yourself. So that's something that you might want to think about as you transition into college life. Now, for many people, classes might be online, and that raises a whole new level of responsibility that you might need to take on. Now, maybe you're staying home, or maybe you're still going to school. Everybody's situation is a little bit different, but it's really important to, especially with things being online, to really set up an effective plan of action for yourself. How are you going to manage all of this work that you need to do? How are you going to stay on top of all of these things when you're maybe not going into a physical classroom, or your tests are, kind of online, and all of these different things that when you don't have that tangible deadline looming in front of you, how do you stick to what you need to do and get all of your coursework done? So there's a lot of different things to think of. So how do we deal with these new responsibilities? You want to give yourself time to adjust. So I mentioned a couple of times thinking about it now and going in with a plan of action. This whole, maybe a couple of weeks prior to starting off your classes, you want to come up with this plan, but you also want to give yourself time to adjust. But also you have to remember that once this starts, it's going to keep going. So you want to make sure that while you give yourself time to adjust, you're also balancing that with that need to adjust as quickly as possible. But be patient with yourself, because the more you stress yourself out, the more difficult it is going to be to stay on top of all of the things that you need to do. Change your mindset. So maybe you need to flip your perspective a little bit. How can you view this very stressful situation, or this less than ideal situation of going off to college for the first time? How can you change this into something that benefits you? How is it positive? So maybe you feel like the online classes will be a good first step into college life and adjusting to the work. Maybe you're worried about the virus that is going on, and maybe having the opportunity to stay home and your classes be online is actually relieving for you, despite maybe missing a semester away, or a semester where you can be out and meeting people. So there's a lot of ways that you can change your mindset. And the ultimate goal here is really to shift your perspective from what's wrong to what's right. The more that you focus on what's going right, and the more you focus on what's positive about the situation, the better you're able to deal with stress and handle whatever happens to come your way. Now, that's easier said than done and takes a lot of practice. But if you really start to get in the habit of maybe seeking out things that you're grateful for, or thankful for, or trying to find the positive in things, it becomes more of a mental habit. So I'm going to encourage everybody to really practice changing your mindset to shift from what's wrong or what's negative to what's right or what's positive. Managing your time well and staying on top of things and getting into a routine is huge. And there's a lot of different ways that you can do this, and different things work for different people. But it's really important to figure out as early as you can what seems to work for you. So maybe you want to go in with the idea of trying a lot of different things on how to manage your time. So for some people, it may be managing things on an electronic calendar. For other people, it might be having a planner. For other people, it might be, annotating or writing notes on the syllabus. Whatever works for you, try a lot of different things out and see what works, see what helps you stay on top of things. And also ask for help when you need it. One of the challenges with being more remote is that you might not have your professor up in the front of the room and be able to, feel comfortable reaching out and walking up to your professor to ask a question at the end of class. But maybe it might be helpful to set a precedent of reaching out to your professors via email to introduce yourself, so that if you do need help or you do need to make contact later on in the semester, you feel comfortable doing so. But also, you want to know what resources are available for you for help. So most college campuses do have counseling centers available and counseling services available for students. Find out what those resources are. If you need accommodations, or you're having difficulty with the technology or any different thing, most college campuses do have all of these different departments to be there to assist students. So take some time before you go before your semester starts to find out what these different departments are. So some may be the counseling center or the student solution center. Find out who your resident advisor might be, or how to get help when you need it. Knowing who to contact for public safety if you have an issue on campus, or even just finding a way to get general assistance from the school. Making yourself familiar with the school's website, especially at this time with everything being remote, can be really helpful. Because if you were on campus and you were able to just kind of explore the campus, it might be different. You would kind of figure out some things, but maybe the new way to do that is by exploring the website and seeing what services are available in person and what services are available virtually. And it's important because all the different schools do things a little bit differently. So take some time to familiarize yourself with your college or university's website. I've included a pre-college checklist here because this can be helpful in preparing yourself to transition to college and help you figure out what areas you might want to practice taking responsibility in. So one thing would be paying outstanding bills, applying for financial aid. You probably have already done that about a month out, but you want to make sure that everything might be in place, your health plan is. Make sure that you have the documents that you need to know what your health plan is. Submit any paperwork that's still required. Make sure your registration's good. Develop a budget, as I had mentioned earlier. Make sure you have the books and supplies that you need. Do you need to consider parking? You need to figure out meals. How is dorm room stuff going to work? Do you have an appointment to move into your dorm, which is something that's relatively new at a lot of schools. Who is your roommates going to be? What are the life skills that you need to learn? These are important. Do you know how to go out and get the basic necessities that you need to last you from September to November or December, whenever you're coming back? Do you have all of the things that you need, and do you know how to get what you might need? Do you need to obtain a job? Do you need to find doctors and pharmacies in your area? Do you have access to your student email? These are all things that you might want to consider. Now, also, these are just a few things. There may be other things that are more personal to you. but maybe it's helpful to take some time to make a checklist of your own. What are some of the things that you still need to do? What are some of the things that maybe you haven't thought of yet? And you can use this as a basis to create that checklist for yourself. I mentioned routines before, and routines are something that are very important for maintaining healthy habits. So routines help us be more efficient, they lower stress, helps us to take better care of ourselves and our health. We're more productive and focused. It helps us achieve our goals. And the one thing I really love here is this greater enjoyment in free time and fun. The more that you budget your time for the things that you need to get done, the more time you end up having for free time and fun, and you don't feel guilty in indulging in this free time and fun time because you've already set aside enough time to get done all the things that you needed to get done. So I think that that's something really beneficial about routines, is that everything is budgeted out so that you know you're doing what you need to do. So when it's time to relax, when it's time to have fun, when it's time to rest, you can do so knowing that everything else is taken care of. So how do we make and maintain a routine? So we're going to attempt to recreate the structure from home. So for many of you, maybe the school year looked very structured. A lot of high school students go to school from like 8 to 3 every day, Monday through Friday, and pre-March, that's what life looked like. And then one of the things that happened, and one of the reasons why the pandemic was very stressful, is because all of this structure and all of our routines kind of went to the wayside. We're no longer getting up, getting dressed, getting out of the house, going to school for 7 hours, and then coming home and doing something after school. All of that kind of went away. So if that was something that worked for you in the past, how do you recreate a similar structure? Something else that's challenging about college is it doesn't look like an 8 to 3 schedule for most people. Sometimes classes are different days and different times and kind of all over the place. So how do you manage that? How do you remember where you need to be when? And how do you kind of stay on top of all of that responsibility you have with needing to be somewhere at a specific time that might look very different than it has for most of your life? Planners do help with that. You want to prioritize sleep, nutrition, hygiene, self-care, all of these things. As I mentioned before, take care of your body. You also help take care of your mind. So these things are all important, especially in these new times. Is maybe you haven't been sleeping on a regular schedule. Maybe you haven't been eating the way that you used to in a healthy or balanced way. Maybe you haven't been taking care of yourself as much as you used to or you would want to. If you prioritize these things, you will feel much better about yourself, and that will also help reduce your stress level and help you stay on top of things. You also want to focus on what you do have control over. So we want to accept the things that we don't have control over. So for example, whether the school is online or in person, the different rules that we have in place now, we don't necessarily have control over them. Other people and the virus have control over that. So what do we have control over? So some of the things that you do have control over are listed here: sleep, nutrition, hygiene, self-care, routines, staying on top of your work, maybe getting into the habit of meditating or practicing mindfulness. All of these things are things that you have in your control. And when you focus on those things, it reduces the amount of time spent on the negative things, the stressful things, and you will ultimately feel better. It is also important not to forget breaks and fun or downtime, relaxation time, even in these difficult times where maybe we're not going to as many places as we would like. We can still do things for fun and have some downtime and relaxation time when we need it. And we also want to be honest and gentle with ourselves. We're all going through really difficult times right now. And it's okay to not be okay sometimes. So just be honest about that. Be gentle with yourself. Care for yourself. Nurture yourself. It's it's important that you are able to take care of yourself so that you can do all the other things that you do want to be doing. So how do we maximize our college experience? So there's a lot of different things that you can do to maximize your college experience, but also at the same time, it's going to look a little different now. So one of the things that you could do to really have a fulfilled college experience is to make friends. And that can be really difficult at a time like this. But there's still clubs going on. And if there's not a club that you feel interested in, maybe there's interest out there and other people might want to join a club that you're interested in. So you could always start your own. This is a great way to meet people virtually so that you can start to make these connections so that when you are on campus or in person, you already have these connections built. Attend on-campus events and off-campus events. There's a lot of things being held virtually, meet and greets, orientation events, first year events. Attend these things. Yes, they might be online, but they may be great opportunities to meet people with similar interests to you. Go outside of your comfort zone and say yes. So especially, with these virtual events, maybe it feels uncomfortable or silly to do some of these things. Take a chance, give it a shot. When you say yes to these different things, you never know what opportunity you're going to have. And that also goes for in-person as well. If someone's going somewhere and it feels uncomfortable at first, but it's something that you want to try, maybe it's good to say yes and have somebody to go with to try that thing that you want to try. You could also invite others to join you. Maybe there's somebody else who's feeling uneasy about trying something new or going to an event. Ask somebody to do it with you. When you have somebody there to do it with you, it can feel a little bit more comfortable. Ask the usual questions. So, you can ask people who you know are going to your school about themselves and to kind of just make small talk. Kind of get to know what music they like, what interests they have, what do they like to do on the weekends. All of these conversations can still take place virtually when you start to make these connections, and then these connections will become stronger over time, and hopefully when you're back on campus and seeing people, you'll have these connections formed. Can't do this too much now, but hang out in public spaces. Can do this a little bit, but we have to be very safe when doing this, and it may not be as comfortable or feel as normalized as it used to. But when you are back on campus, hang out in public spaces, be present, don't kind of isolate yourself. Stay connected to those around you, even if it's in a public place, and also be yourself. You're making connections with new people. What are your interests? What are the things that you like to do? What do you bring to the table in this possibly new friendship? So remember to be yourself. Getting involved is also something that's very important on campus. You can join a club, as I mentioned before, attend on-campus events, go on school trips, volunteer, do study groups, intern or interact with non-university communities, get out and act and interact with the community around the school. A lot of different ways for you to get involved. And some tips. Go to class. There's a lot of benefits to this, and it does seem obvious, but it's really important to kind of be engaged with your classes. Not only is it important for your academics, but it's also going to help you get to know people. It's going to help you find people with similar interests, especially if it's a class in your major. You will meet people with similar interests to you. Maybe that person will be in more classes that you have, and that can be really helpful. Also, if you go to class, you'll start to meet your professors, which will help you make connections to the college community and build strong relationships. Identify your study and learning habits. Everyone is a little bit different. You probably have a good idea of what your study or learning habits are to this point. Now you might need to think about how you can hone them or tweak them to use them for the college classes and how the college classes are structured. Take a class unrelated to your major, something that interests you, something that's not necessarily easy, or it's like, oh, this is an easy A, I'm going to take this and bring out my GPA. Well, what interests you? What motivates you? What's going to really help you be connected to learning more about something new? Try to make one connection in each class. The more you make these connections, the more people you'll know. College life will feel more comfortable, and you'll have a lot of connections as you go through your college career. And then maybe those people will be great resources even when your college career is over. Use your school's resources. As I mentioned before, a lot of these resources are becoming virtual or already have become virtual. So the library or the writing center, the counseling center, these are resources that are there for that help that you might need. So utilize them. The library has a ton of great resources, probably more resources than you can even imagine. So take some time to familiarize yourself with their website so that you can get to know what resources they do have. The writing center can really help with your writing and give you tips. The counseling center can help with if you're struggling, or they might even put on some wellness events. A lot of counseling centers are doing virtual workshops, sort of like what we're doing right now, to help manage with college stress. So that's something that you might want to look into as well. There's also the career center that you might want to become familiarized with, work on your resume throughout your time at college. They can also help with part-time jobs or anything like in terms of college preparation. Job preparation while you're in college. So those are all fantastic resources. You also want to know your professors or your advisors and reach out if you have questions or need help. So remember, before I mentioned emailing people early on so that it feels more comfortable. You don't necessarily want to wait to introduce yourself to your professor or your advisor until you're desperate for help. You want to have some of that relationship built. You'll feel more comfortable if you have to reach out because you need help. Also, find ways to learn outside of the classroom. College is such a great opportunity to really go explore the world and learn about a lot of different things. So find ways to learn outside of the classroom. There's a lot of different events going on with colleges. Colleges get involved in a lot of different things. And there might be other opportunities for you, or you might hear about community connections where you can also learn. But finding time to maybe read or do some of your own research on different topics that you're interested in can be something that really helps you grow academically. Staying safe is also something that's really important, especially when you're on campus. So you want to make sure that you know the important phone numbers of campus security, resident advisors, local emergency services, as I mentioned before, doctors, pharmacies, those kinds of things. You want to be able to react to an emergency situation or an unsafe situation just as you would if you were at home. You also want to know how you're going, where you're going, and how you're getting somewhere. So have a plan. Always go with somebody, especially if you're out at night or in an unfamiliar place. Trust your gut. If you feel like something's off or something's uncomfortable, or maybe something's making you hesitate a little bit, trust your gut and maybe address that. So I don't, this place doesn't seem so great. Maybe we shouldn't be going here, and maybe we should just go back and hang out at the house or in the dorm tonight. Don't hesitate to ask for help when you need it, and have emergency plans in mind. So what would you do if you got in a bad situation? How would you react? How would you keep yourself safe? So now I want to talk a little bit about the family, because for families, this is a big transition as well. It's not just for the student. There's a lot of transition and coping that the family needs to do as well. So I love this image here because it really captures the emotion of the family, especially the parents, as a child transitions to college, and how it's so different from a child going off to the first day of school in nursery school or kindergarten or in first grade. And then as the child gets older, that child is ready to go and the parents aren't ready to let go, and it feels very different. So if there's any parents on here or watching this, you may identify with this feeling right here. So there's a lot of different emotional experiences as you send your child to college. So there's fear, there's uncertainty, anxiety, excitement. So these are some examples I've put up here. Will your child be okay? You can't keep them safe anymore. Maybe some anxiety is, will your child do well in their classes? What happens if your child gets sick? These are some of the more prevalent experiences that you might be having due to the pandemic. This sense of uncertainty, what will happen as the months continue? Are they going to make it through the whole semester, or are they going to have to come home? If they have to come home, or if they get sick, what do we do? How do we get them home if things are as bad as they were before? But also, there's negative emotional experiences, there's positive emotional experiences. Excitement as well. It's a huge step for your child. You're proud of them. This is a big accomplishment for them. So these are all things that they're kind of juggling right now. And as I mentioned before, all of these things sort of happen all at the same time. So it's not just like I'm scared or I'm worried or I'm excited. It's kind of like I'm scared, I'm worried, and I'm excited. So there's a couple of phases of this transition. So right now, most people are probably in the preparation stage, getting ready to send your child off to college. Maybe you're still kind of preparing of what is this going to look like? What is it going to look like when the schools are actually executing this plan that they've come up with? What does my child need? And this is kind of like this nesting period. And then there's this send off. You either if they, and this is really highly aligned with kids going away to school, but the send off is that short term, highly emotional event. It's that kid, you're dropping your child off, you're leaving them there, and they're starting college, and this is like their first real period of time in their life where they're fully independent and on their own. And then there's the early days. So this can be a really difficult period for many. So it can feel like a sense of loss in the home. The student can begin to feel homesick. And this period can last, a couple of weeks, maybe a couple of months, but it's usually fairly short term if managed well. And if you prepare for this difficult period of time, you can successfully transition into the thriving stage where the family and the student begin to adjust to this new life, to this new routine, and to adapt to the new needs of the college student. So there's this new period where everyone begins to thrive, both the parents, siblings, and the college student themselves. So some tips for coping with this. So plan ahead. So during this preparation stage, have discussions about what life is going to look like after the child transitions to college. What is life going to look like for the child? What is life going to look like for siblings? What is life going to look like for the parents? What could it look like? We know that what it has looked like, and it's looked like that for probably many years now, and it's been relatively stable. Now you get to think about, what will it look like? What could it look like? What are some activities that maybe you'd want to do, or how do you get to adjust your schedule? How are you going to communicate? How is the family going to communicate with a college student? What is reasonable? What is the agreed upon level of communication that you're all going to engage in? These are all things that can really help reduce the stress levels, reduce the anxiety, and also not discount anybody's expectations as you go into the transition to the time for college. So one of the things that can be very stressful is parents want to maybe talk to their child all the time once they go to school, but the child thinks like, this is my opportunity for independence, and this is my opportunity to really kind of take a break from that. So maybe there's two different sets of expectations, and if this is a discussion that happens before the child goes off to college, it can be a much smoother transition for everybody involved. Seek support. Other people have been through similar experiences, and they can be great resources. Find out what worked for them. Find out what helped them be able to manage this difficult transition, be able to manage this period of time. And really, how did they get through it? What did they do? Also, plan to spend time with family members. Who are those people who are maybe experiencing a similar feeling as you are? These are all things that can be really helpful to do, to get this support, to talk with others, and be able to have an outlet for the emotions that you may be feeling. Another thing you can do is shift the focus back to you. What are some things that you've been putting off as a parent? What are some things that you haven't had time for? How can you feel busy? How can you feel enriched? What is that hobby that you always said, I'd love to do this, but I haven't had time to? Or what are some things that maybe you think you've been putting off? Maybe a vacation that you wanted to take on your own, or maybe spending some time doing some crafts, or being able to just read more. All of these things are things that you'll now have time for. So think about ways that you can keep yourself busy, because the busier you are, the less time you have to stay in these negative emotions, and the more you'll feel that you have positive things to look forward to, right? So that's changing that perspective again, going from that negative perspective on the loss to the positive perspective of, now I get to do X, Y, and Z. Now I get to read more. Now I'll have more time. Now I won't have to rush around so much. Whatever the positives may be, it's a great time to think about them now, so that you have them in mind to combat or offset the feelings of loss, or the negative feelings that you're having once the child goes to school. And practicing patience. So remember that the transition gets easier over time. It's going to be difficult in the beginning. It's likely going to be difficult for a little while, but the more open you are to letting that feeling pass by and just be something you accept for a short time, can help it go away over time. Remember, I said before that it can last a few days, weeks, or months. It depends on how patient you are with and how you deal and cope with this transition. So I want to thank everybody for joining us or watching this. I want to open it up if there's any questions or any thoughts that anybody has who is here with us live. If you've watched this and you do have further questions or want some additional tips on coping, feel free. Our contact information is here. It's listed on this slide here, and always follow us on Facebook or Instagram for additional mental health tips and wellness ideas and strategies for coping. And in case you don't know who we are the Mental Health and Wellness Center at Molloy College, and we're at an outpatient mental health center offering telehealth appointments at this time. So we offer individual, family, and couples therapy for individuals of all ages. And we also offer a series of wellness initiatives and partner with libraries to bring the presentations such as this to the community. So feel free to contact us, email, call us, visit our website. We are always happy to assist in any way that we can. If there's any questions or any comments or anything somebody would like me to clarify.
I would definitely just like to say thank you, Kellyanne, for all that information. Not only did you give us things to think about, but you gave us some tips and some real practical advice. And hopefully, anyone who's watching will take away some important information that will help them when they're facing some of these new struggles that they will be. And some of them are just everyday struggles that you would face under any circumstances, transitioning into a new phase of life. So it was great to hear all this, and hopefully, if you have any questions and you don't can't think of them at the moment, you can reach out to Kellyanne at the Mental Health and Wellness Center at Malloy College, and I'm sure she'd be very glad to get back to you.
Absolutely, and thank you so much for having me. Always happy to work with the community and provide these resources, and I hope it was helpful for everyone. I see Herbert said thank you. Thank you for joining us, Herbert, and I'm glad it was helpful.
Yes, thank you so much, and we are going to end the recording at this time.